Hi, hello, and good evening to everyone. Welcome to this panel discussion about what women want. And I have a fantastic set of panelists to talk about what women want. And we could not have got a better set of panelists. I will quickly introduce you to all of them. Quick introduction. My name is Udai Thoot. I am registered investment advisor and a member of ARIA. My panelists today are all good friends. Uh, First of all, there's Dilshad. Dilshad, as we all know, is a certified financial planner, founder and managing director of Dilzal Consultants. She has over 20 years of experience in financial advisory domain with over 300 families all over the world as her clients. She has created financial peace and independence in lives of many other people. She's a fantastic person. The next panelist is Kavita Menon. Is the principal advisor and founding owner of Proprietors Wealth. She is India's first woman advisor to get licensed as a SEBI RIA in 2013. Fantastic. She holds an MMS in finance, CFA from ICFI, and a CFP certification. She has over 20 years of experience in wealth management and advisory. Welcome, Kavita. My next panelist is Kiran Telang. Kiran Telang is a certified financial planner, a registered investment advisor, and an author of Mindful Retirement. I need to understand a lot more about being mindful from her. Her work experience in the banking and personal finance industry spans over 2 decades. She writes in various media publications and appears on several TV shows on personal finance. Welcome, Kiran. My final panelist for the evening is Renu. Renu Maheshwari is the first individual SEBI RI in Tamil Nadu and has over 25 years of experience in finance industry. She is the co-founder of Fin Scholars as well as the founding director of the Association of Registered Investment Advisors and the founding member of the CFP Professional Advisory Council for India. Welcome, Renu. I welcome all of you to this session. I welcome all the participants to this session, all the women folks as part of this session, wishing you all a very Women's Day, happy Women's Day rather. And without much delay, let me quickly move forward and start the proceedings for the day. Welcome, all of you.
Thank you for having us.
Super. So we have about an hour, and as the topic is what women want, we will be talking to all of them to understand intricacies of how talking to women clients, addressing their needs, unique needs rather, and understand a little bit better so that as we think about our own practice, we can possibly use some of these inputs as we sort of enhance our practice. So, Renu, my first question is to you.
Mhm.
What is the need to focus on women investors? Is there an opportunity for financial advisors uh, right here?
Okay, so first of all, it's a great thing to be done because this was a neglected segment of the market. And how neglected, I'll tell you, in 2013, when I wanted to start WOW sessions, that's women only workshop sessions, which we did for years together and had been still doing it, people kind of question, why are you wasting time on this? Uh, that's a kind of neglected segment of the market this one is. The bigger thing is, as financial advisor you also need to make money, so it needs to make commercial sense for us. If you look at this segment, this is the segment in India which is getting educated for last 5 decades. I would say, our generation was the first one who kind of got out and started working actively, lots of them making more money than the spouses in their life. So they have good quantity of money that they can invest, and they need help with that, because financial literacy in India, we know, is at abysmally low level, whether it's men or women. But women also accept that they do not know, and they come forward and they ask for help. So they make wonderful clients for you. Third is, see, inheritance laws changed sometime around 2000, Parliament passed a law that, you know, grandparents' properties were to be passed on to the daughters in inheritance, you know, just like guys were getting it. That has given a lot of money to a lot of women, which they were not expecting. Third is single children family, two children family where you, both are daughters, or single children family, only daughters. So more and more inheritance is coming to the daughters. Huge market over there. And most of them, again, like I said, they really need a lot of help. So if you look at it even from commercial purpose, commercial angle, it's a lot of huge market out there. Nelson did a survey in 2013, according to which 83% of working women did not have any investment say. I mean, can you imagine the kind of market that we have? So it makes a lot of commercial sense. Forget about the good thing to be done for the society.
Awesome. So, Renu, thank you for making sure that our focus is clear. So, thank you for bringing this out. Kavita, here I want to ask you: is that as financial advisors, when we are approaching clients, right, we have our own set of biases when we are dealing with different sets of clients, and there could be some biases that come in way of us addressing women clients. This could be as part of a family setup or where they are leading. What are these things that we should be more aware of, and maybe some self-awareness around this would help?
So Uday, thanks for asking me this, because very early on in my career, I realized that there is a bias that we have as advisors, as financial planners. Whenever families approach, it is usually the male who's the head of the family, and with whom most discussions and conversations, are centered around. While we would encourage the women to join in, etc., but the main decision makers have always been the men. So very early on, I realized that we ourselves as advisors have something called as the patriarchal bias. That it comes out in very subtle ways. It's not something that we do on purpose, but it is there. It is definitely there. So can I tell you the example that we just discussed today morning? Can I just share that
Yes,
right
yes,
now?
please. Absolutely, absolutely.
So the Boston University conducted a research. They asked a question to about 200 psychology students of the university and about 100 kids from the age of 7 to 17. And so the riddle is this, okay? A father and a son are driving in a car, and the car meets with an accident. The father dies on the spot. The son is severely injured and is taken to the ICU. When he's taken into the ICU, the surgeon looks at him and says, "I cannot operate. This person is my son." How is it possible? So this was the question that was asked. And surprisingly, less than 15% of those interviewed got the answer right. And these are young people we're talking about. The surgeon was the mother. So you're talking about a very forward, developed country as America, where you can still see that there is still that bias. A similar question was asked regarding a mother and a daughter who are traveling, and the mother dies in the crash, and the daughter is wheeled into the ICU. The nurse there says, "She is my daughter." And again, people were not able to figure that the nurse was a man. So such is the stereotypical. So we don't do this consciously; it's in our subconscious. So my personal view is that whenever we go, at least I try when I meet families, is to get rid of that. We decide prior that the lady is not the primary decision maker. We decide prior that she will not be interested, or she doesn't have, she's not aware, which is most likely true also. But as advisors, I think it is our duty to nudge them in a direction where they also are equal, if not, the primary decision makers in family investment and planning.
Awesome.
Uday, sorry if I may add.
Yes, please, Dilshad, go ahead.
So I think another bias that we as women advisors have is, are we good enough, especially in a male-dominated industry? And I'm saying this from personal experience because way back in 2008, when I was called by CNBC for a nomination presentation, I was in a room with only men. and there were these big CEOs and CXOs with a left hand and a right hand person and a behind and a front person, and I was like the only woman there all alone, right? So I kept asking myself, what am I going to do? Is this good enough? Am I good enough to even be here and submitting my nomination for this? I think that's an bias that all women at the start of their career should remove, right? And sometimes we feel that only if we can give our best should we be stepping into this. Again, that should be removed, because as long as we are able to give 80% of what we do, and if we do it well, I think that should be good enough.
I don't think any of you here you guys are shining examples of what women advisors can do. So I don't take whatever you are saying, Dilshad. I know you have crossed many more hurdles, but Kavita, thank you for bringing that out. And it is interesting, when I was having a chat with Kavita, for a moment, I won't say it came to me naturally, but for a moment I was thinking, ki, yaar, wo doctor kaun hai? Matlab, and that's how we are sort of all grown up, right? So it's there somewhere. And Kiran, here I want to bring you in. When it is because these biases are there, we need to be mindful of our communication. And given that you are an author of Mindful Retirement, I want to say that what is these things that we should be mindful of when we are communicating with women investors?
See, the basic thing which everybody understands is that in our the communication has to be transparent and clear, and it has to be very honest. In addition, when the communication is going out to a woman, the one most distinctive factor I feel is that don't talk down to a woman. Don't let the stereotypes come in, that she will not understand. Treat her as an equal, treat her the same way that how you would communicate with a man. So talking down is, I think, the biggest irritant, what comes in. So, I'll give you an example. When I go to say...
Kiran, I want to actually interfere here. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sometimes this talking down, and I want you to actually give examples of what this talking down is, because what happens is that some of the times, like we have been talking, it comes so naturally that you don't realize you're doing this, but you're actually doing it. So please give some examples of what you mean.
Exactly. So also what happens is, because these stereotypes are built in, like what Kavita and Dilshad were saying, that we have grown up with that. The community has, instilled those things in our head so deeply that we don't realize what we are doing and we behave in a certain manner. Now, the example that I was going to share was that I have had this experience when I go to a shop to say buy for electronic goods, say a laptop. The way the salesperson is talking to me vis-a-vis the way he's talking to my husband is so different. Whereas I am the primary customer, I have done my research, I have the money in my account, and I'm going to be using that product. Similar way, when I shift to the kitchen equipment, it is totally different. So why is it that bias is there? So I am also a professional, I am also a homemaker. So both ways. So why should anybody talk down to a woman in any area? Understand what level she is at and then communicate at that level. If there is somebody who's a working woman, there would be doubts in her mind about things. So clear off those doubts, but don't talk down.
Can I just
explain it like
one anecdote?
Sure,
I'm interrupting, Kiran. But this talking down episode happened once when we were working. One of my clients just told this lady that we are all sitting together, and the client and his wife is sitting there, and my colleague tells her, "Ma'am, आप बस sign करो, फिक्र मत करो, आपको मैं बाद में समझा दूँगी, आप sign कर दो." And this lady is looking at him all flushed. She said, "This is my money. You better explain to me." It's one of those early things that I remember about what you should never do with a woman. Please don't tell her कि आप बस sign करो. You have to explain. That is talking down to a woman.
Yeah, and also, don't make jokes that women will always be, sir, आप madam के लिए gold में invest कर दो, या madam को shopping का card दे देंगे. Those things are like, it just puts the women off. I really get infuriated when such kind of things come up. It's very annoying.
I'll tell you one example. This talking down happened, and it's in our own industry. When I started FinScholars, initially I was doing it myself, but then very soon my husband joined me, because we needed systems, and he's got an IT background. senior level executive and everything. But what happened was initially when few AMC people came, they were like looking at me that I'm just a signing authority that he has taken in, and he's the one who is going to be talking all finance. And then he would finally, after 5 minutes of conversation, he would say, see, you know what, I'm an IT person, she's the finance person, she's the one who runs this business, I'm supporting her with all the systems and all. And it's what we're talking about, biases over here. It is so much prevalent everywhere. But Kavita, coming to that, sorry, I'm just taking one more second there, because this research that you're talking about, this Boston research, I see a huge difference now. We have been using this particular example in all of our WOW workshops right from beginning. The change that I saw over 8 years, so I'm talking about from 2013 to now 2021. Earlier, this 15 to 20% ratio was coming out. Now, when we ask this question, if it's a group of youngsters, it's 80% are getting it right. And the older people are also getting better, but youngsters, 80% of them are getting right. It shows the mindset and huge difference I see in the, over these two generations of women right now.
Thanks, Renu. Thanks, Kiran. Dilshad, I want to quickly bring you in here. You work with close to 300 families. You regularly insist that both the spouses be present for all the meetings. And why that insistence? How does it help? Please explain. You need to unmute yourself, Dilshad.
Sorry. So there were two practical examples. One was a case where we had, during one of the goal review discussions, both the male and the female speaking, and they were arguing about, we had reached the education goal and the marriage goal. And the, they're from North India, and the husband insisted on having a priority for the marriage goal over the education goal. And the wife put down her foot and said, no, I think we need to, give priority to the education goal, because obviously resources are limited. And they kept arguing between themselves. So I was just sitting there and, observing the whole thing. And then finally, the lady made the man understand that, look, whatever happens, it's our responsibility to first educate our own children. And then, we can decide whether they have a, let them do expenses. Another instance being where a wife and husband, and we insist that both are there so that they both can argue it out then and there and sort the matter, was that their cash flow was very, very, limited. So their expenses were huge. They had a huge income also, but their lifestyle was very high. I mean, they had a very, flamboyant lifestyle. So, they wanted to buy a very expensive villa. And we told them that, look, this is the reality, and you tell us what we can do around this. And then again, the wife put her foot down and said, show me these expenses that I can cut down. Show me these things that I can, because she very adamant that, I want to take charge of this to ensure that we are able to meet this dream villa that we want to buy, right? So I think it brings a lot of practical aspects in decision making. And the other good aspect is that if there is a disconnect or a disagreement between both, it's sorted out then and there, right? So they're able to then take an informed decision together.
Fantastic. So one, it makes the whole process a lot more practical. It resolves issues upfront. So to that extent, whatever plan we propose definitely sees execution, and it just does not become like a theoretical exercise. So fantastic. Thank you for bringing those out. Now, let me quickly, I was as preparing for this, I was researching, and there are some things that we kind of are aware of. And do female clients make better clients as compared to male clients? And the reason I'm asking this, so I was going through some research which says that male drivers are lost for longer periods of time as compared to female drivers, because the male ego does not let them ask for direction, right? So any one of you, Kiran, go ahead, please answer this question.
Well, I wouldn't outright say that they are good or bad. It depends on the individual traits. While yes, research you have quoted does say that it is more likely that a woman will ask for help, and it happens a lot of times. Some differences that I've noticed is that women take a little longer to decide and sign up as a client, but once they do, they fully trust you. I mean, they will not question basis that trust, whereas men will take a very, very long time to actually put the 100% trust in what you're saying, because they will always be second guessing. So a lot of times I have noted these differences, but eventually over a period of time, I think both of the genders, they settle down to that, basic acceptance that, okay, this advisor is doing good for us and we need to follow the recommendations.
So what you're saying is that with women investors, the process initially takes a bit longer. So to that
Yes,
extent, we as advisors need to be patient.
right.
But once we establish that trust and gain that faith, it sort of becomes a lot more smoother. Though with say male folks, it would be maybe it starts faster, but because they also have their own set of confidence and I know it kind of stuff, so it sort of moves a little bit back and forth. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, probably because I think for women, a lot of times it's also because of the stereotypes, that taking money decisions for them may be difficult, or maybe they're not good at it, so those kind of fears are there. So that's why they tread very lightly, and they take care of interviewing you and, checking what are you going to do, discussing in more detail as to, how you will provide solutions. So those kind of questions come up more in depth with women, and they take a little longer to decide.
Okay. Interesting. Kavita, when we talk about investment behavior, there is this whole thing around overconfidence bias, and generally overconfidence. Research shows is shown more in men than in women. So that naturally makes women possibly better investors, or at least temperamentally better suited investors. Any practical thoughts around this?
Yeah, I don't know how much the research, because research is on a small sample of people, and every
Sure.
experience and every woman is different. But I have my experiences, women are generally risk averse for most part. Even women advisors are more likely to do an asset rebalancing, getting out of riskier assets than male advisors. If you really went to a person, to a male and a female advisor, and asked, okay, both of them say we are conservative, yet you will find the male taking more chances and more riskier investment bets than the woman would. And this is true. I have seen all my women advisor friends, they all believe in rebalancing, reallocating to goals. It's a continuous process for them. I tend to disagree with a lot of the male counterparts and advisors who tend to want to take more risk for better returns. See, everyone has a right and a wrong, but I think women tend to be risk averse. And sometimes to an extent where you need to guide them also to take a little bit more risk so that their goals are achievable. They tend to get very worried if there are more huge for corrections in the value of the portfolios. So they tend to while they understand it's long term, they need a little bit more hand holding when it comes to more riskier investments like equities, etc. But otherwise, I think as investors, as clients, I won't. I'm not so biased. I think they're both equally,
Okay.
yeah,
All right.
very different, very unique. Each investor is.
Okay. Dilshad, Renu, I want you guys to very quickly take a shot. Are like women investors really safety seekers? Is that how they are? And is this safety inherently because when we talk about risk, we generally talk about market risk. But is that safety component coming because of the market, or is it coming for other reasons? I would like to talk both of you to share some thoughts around that.
So yes, if I were to speak for myself, I do have a bias which is like more a conservative kind of bias towards our clients' investments. There's always been that, let it be, a balance. I mean, let the returns be the same throughout rather than it going up and down. And I think that comes from the multiple roles or the, tasks that we do, the multitasking that we do. So, we are we have seen that way different facets in our life, right? We've been, we've taken breaks in our careers. We need to ensure that at any point in time that we need to have this amount available. So I think definitely for myself, I can't speak for the others, but I do have a more conservative bias when it comes to portfolio allocation.
So if I would talk about the investor side, I feel most of the women investors, and I'm from Chennai, so I'm giving that locational. There can be a location bias as well, but I do feel most of the women are more risk averse. It's coming from a lot of things. One is this generation of women, at least to us, to me, with the clientele which is coming. Most of them are first generation earners who have got their own money. The other ones who have got a lot of money to invest are the ones who have inherited. So they always feel that there is an inherent responsibility for them to give that more money to their children rather than using up that money and losing it out by taking risky decisions. Second is when they are the first generation earners, they are answering to 101 people. If it's a married woman, and I'm telling you this from practical, this thing, she's answering to her husband, she's answering to her in-laws, she's answering to her mother and father both. And I was sharing that one very interesting incident today morning with Uday also. This lady goes back for her delivery back to her own hometown. So earlier she was listening to some bit to advisor and more bit to the husband. Once she goes back, she is listening only to her father, and she's not taking logical decisions. I'm not saying it's that she's being illogical. I'm saying that influence and that there's a lot of answerability which is built into our society. If a woman makes a mistake, everyone, and this is, I'm telling you from my own clients coming back and telling me that, see, if I make a mistake, they're all asking me, okay, you lost the money and this and that. But if the spouse loses that money, take care, you'll come back, don't worry, or maybe he's a guy, he knows about money. So that is another thing. Third is security is very important to them, very, very important. So, and anthropologically, they came out of the house to earn, to probably have the financial independence, don't want to lose it at all at any cost.
Interesting. So this is this need for safety comes from very different aspect. It comes from the life experiences, because you are earning, you take a break, and then that income stops again, you start earning. So there is that bit that brings in, possibly you are the first person or the second person in the last 50-60 years in your house who started taking financial decisions. So to that extent, that there is that additional responsibility to prove people right. So very interesting, of why this whole safety bit is sort of coming through. I would like to now take this discussion to these very, very unique cases that you all shared with me around your clients, and fantastic stories. So Kiran, why don't you start with this special key and car story that you had, wherein the husband is a homemaker and the wife is taking the boots and sort of earning. So please go ahead.
Yeah, so it's a very interesting story. You very well put it in that key and ka mode. So as a society, we have seen this happening, in the lower strata of the society. If we look at our maids, so it's very often that the man in the house is not earning, and the maid is actually working and making the house run, and taking care of the children's goals and everything. But when it comes to a level where we talk about middle class or upper middle class homes, people like us, that is not very common. So what I would say is, it is quite common, but it is hidden in plain view. Because for a woman, even if she is in charge, it is very difficult for her to let the world see the way things are in her family. It is not an accepted role that the woman is earning and the man is managing the house, or if he's not earning. So that acceptance level is very difficult. So this couple came to me somewhere in the they were in the mid-30s, and when they came to me, they came through a referral. So the husband's brother was my client, and he referred this couple. So I did not know the background of these people. So while they came in, the wife was the one who was doing the talking during the initial conversation. And when I looked at the financials, I got to figure out that she's the one who's earning the money in the family. And while the husband had some small income from certain freelancing jobs that he used to do, that was not amounting to much. So when they came to me, they did not have any children, and they had been trying, but it did not work out. So they had given up hope. So they were pretty happy-go-lucky, things. They had some 5 loans when they came across, and the only goal that they had was retirement, because probably the brother had been pushing them, that you need to start getting your act together. So that was the only goal, and the wife was also not very, she was not taking that charge to actually invest money at that point in time. So she was okay with those loans, and so loans were not only for home, it was also for white goods, and there were 2 cars in the family and a high-end bike. So the husband was very fond of gadgets and bikes and cars. So there were those 2 additional things which were there. We made the plan, we made the retirement goals, everything was done. And when it actually came to, the insurances part, when they were actually going to apply for the insurance, this lady tells me that she has conceived. So the term plan could not happen because she was carrying. So the whole picture changed, So as soon as they knew that there's going to be a child in the family, the woman took charge. And that till then, where they were not okay with, doing away with these loans, and there were no certain goals except for retirement. There were these goals which came in: the child's education, the wife wanted to buy a home. You have
Kiran,
something to say? Yeah.
Yes, Kiran, this is interesting. What I really want to address or understand here is that now it is very natural to have a conversation with the, and frankly, I'm talking about my biases, not to anyone else. It's very natural to go talk to the male members and discuss financial matters of everyone, like कि आपकी वाइफ के अकाउंट में क्या करना है, बच्चों के अकाउंट में क्या करना है, and all that kind of stuff. Now, when you got this understanding कि hey, this is how the role is, right? How did you involve the male member in the discussion? Right, yeah. And how did you have separate discussions with the wife, who was the primary person responsible?
Yeah, so that was a very touchy point, actually. I was trying to be very careful that I don't hurt the male ego, because I knew this is an unusual situation, and it was not easy for the wife. So I could figure that out. I mean, even in the initial discussion, and luckily for me, the male ego did not play a major role here, because the husband understood the situation and he had accepted that the wife is always going to be earning higher than him, and she is the one who should, take charge. So even when the agreement was signed, it was signed with the wife because she was the primary earner, and this was said by the husband that let her sign the agreement. Because initially when I didn't know, so I just asked, who's going to sign the agreement? So it's like, she will sign it. So luckily for me, that issue was not there. But if that issue had been there, it would be a major problem to, solve it. I would have to tiptoe around things if, that was an issue. So, when the woman actually took charge, when this child came into picture, she took charge and she ensured that they got rid of all those unnecessary, the bike and the car, and the loans were gone. And then they actually sold off the house which they had just kept and rented out, and they bought a place where they're actually going to live. So the entire picture changed, and that the woman took charge and did that.
Fantastic. So I want to quickly ask, saying that hey, अगर ऐसा कोई situation आता है जहाँ पे when you realize that the roles are slightly reversed, any interesting ways to sort of handle this?
See, I'm again being biased, so again with this caveat coming from
Renu,
Chennai.
please be biased. No North Indian, South Indian stuff, please. We don't want to now then have a separate session on North Indian biases and.
Okay, so the thing is, we have plenty. We have 50% of our clients are women clients. Okay, and out of them, few of them are divorced and widows kind of thing, but most of them are the ones who are earning more than the husband. Okay, so that's and I would like what Kiran is saying.
Renu, I suppose similar energies attract similar energies. I'm just joking.
No, no, no,
I'm
no.
just
Oh,
joking. I'm just joking. I'm just
yeah,
joking.
I know. I wish that was true. My husband, I can never compete with him.
Nala,
His
Nala, please,
earnings and all.
please go ahead.
I wish that was true. I really wish.
I
So
wish so.
yes. So the thing is, a lot of them come from families whose mothers were also educated and were working or something. I mean, this, I'm talking about the male, the husband. The spouse comes from a family which was where he had seen empowered women and had no problems with uh, the wife earning more. And I see very, very healthy relationships. So it's that when we talk about male ego, I feel there is this metrosexual man where that thing actually doesn't matter so much. Or maybe because being a woman advisor, more of those clients are coming to me. I don't know.
Okay.
That can also be the
I'm
situation. But that is, yeah.
I'm mindful of the time here. We have another
Yes,
20,
please, please,
25
please.
minutes.
Yeah, go ahead. Yes, yes,
Uh,
I know. Yeah.
this whole thing around career break, coming back to work, is the reality for women folks, right? Kavita, you had a very interesting case to share with all of us. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so it's very similar to what Renu said, where it's been a turnaround story. So I'll explain. When I met this couple a decade back, and the woman was very highly educated, a chemical engineer no less, and she had taken a break for family. She had two beautiful daughters, and the husband was the sole earning member. So the plan, when we made a financial plan, obviously they had a long retirement. There was a big period before they would retire, but it did look like they would not be able to achieve the goals that they wanted. A lot of goals besides the retirement would not be achieved with the savings that they are planning. While I told them that you don't need to worry because you're looking at retirement in like 30 years from now, so just let's just focus on starting the process. While the lady was worried, so I said, listen, now your girls are a little grown up, so why don't you just start doing something part time? It doesn't need to be something big. You can just start, and maybe then step by step you can move into something that, because you're so you are educated, you have the qualifications, you had a roaring career before the kids happened. uh, so it was just a nudge. It wasn't that I thought that she's going to really go and start working, but she took the advice very seriously. Went on to her old company, took up a part-time job, and started working 2 to 3 hours in a day. She was just doing some consulting job, and in a matter of 2 years, she figured that there is an opportunity to trade chemicals from China and become the sole distributor for certain companies. This lady started this work, and in a matter of 3 years, the turnaround, the turnover of the company was more than 5 crores. This woman was she just been shooting like that. She was doing that well, so well that the husband quit his job to join her. So very similar to Kiran's story, but here now the husband and wife are together working in the business, and what we thought they will not achieve in 30 years, they are finished doing in a decade. Right now they're there. They have already completed their savings, the corpus requirements for their retirement, for the kids, everything is there. And this is just because we just, as an advisor, all I did was just one nudge in the direction, and that's all that was needed.
Kavita, thank you so much for sharing this. Right. So now, what I want to ask is that we will find these situations wherein the income is not sufficient. It is important that the spouse who has taken a break goes back to work.
Yes.
And where do we draw the line of, as advisors, how do we say it ki bhai, this has to happen without at
You
times
can't say
knowing
it has to
what is the family background?
Correct.
There could be other
You
reasons
can't
why
say
that
it
she.
has to happen. You can only put a seed. You put the idea in their head and you nudge them. You encourage them. See, at the end of the day, as advisors, it's not that you cannot get into their personal lives. That line is very fine, very thin. And at some point, you will come to know, what is happening in their family lives as well, because it's a part, right? Health, wealth, everything comes together. Our lives are all about that. So at some point, you will probably move to that, cross that line and have to. So you can't push them. You can nudge them, and you can put the idea. See, just plant the seed, and you say this will be great because if this happens, this can happen. And,
Okay.
you just show the picture.
Okay.
Then it's up to them whether they want to go with it or not.
All right. Thanks, Kavita. Uh, uh, very quickly, I want to address. We are maybe another 20 minutes. Dilshad, if you could make very quick points. We discussed this case of a divorcee client of yours, and and Renu, you spoke about a client with inheritance. I want to bring both of them together here. One, we know statistically that women live longer than men. So to that extent, the whole planning process has to be slightly taking into cognizant of this fact. Given how lifestyle changes are happening, the number of divorces are generally rising. So, Dilshad, if you can talk about this specific case very quickly, few learnings
Sure.
for all of us.
So there have been quite a few divorce cases in my career, but let me talk about the most recent one which has happened. This lady was a running friend of mine, so I'm into running as well as recreation running, and she was doing her first marathon. So we were very excited because for her it was the first full marathon, 42 kilometers, and for me it was a third. And we generally get long hours where you just keep can't talk. There's a lot of silence, and you need to do your training runs. But when you do your training, you typically get closer to that person because you're doing it for months together. And that's when I realized that there was something which was not fully okay with her, and she really didn't open out. And in after one of the long runs, I just asked her, "Hey, I hope everything's okay at the home front. How are you? Everything's fine." So she still didn't say anything, and then finally she went home and she messaged me that thank you for asking, but yes, I'm in the process of a divorce, and it's been very difficult. And then I said, why don't we just meet for lunch or whatever? And when we met, she actually unraveled that she's going to be having to stay in another faraway place, very far from the center of the city in Bangalore. And so I just gave her two or three kind of very open kind of advice. And she said, why don't we just take this into a professional relationship? I'm really happy, since we know each other anyway through running friends, you gain that trust. So I said, look, I'm really happy to help you. And then she came, she obviously had a huge amount through her own savings plus some alimony, etc. But the point here that I'm trying to make is that divorcees normally will take a long time to decide and move forward, simply because they've had bitter experiences in their personal life in the past. So although I had her full trust because I'm a close friend as well with her, she took a while to go through the complete process and execute. So we cannot expect, or we cannot force, and we cannot compel upon such people. And even when I gave her the benefit of direct plan, and the benefit of direct investment, she said, I know what you're saying is absolutely right, but I'd like to do my own research as well, and I'd like to come back having fully understood that the decision that I'm taking today around my finances are my decisions. It's not only that someone's asking me to do that.
Dilshad, I want to bring in. So there are two parts of this conversation, right? One part is around being that is the financial advisor to play some of that role of the agni aunt to sort of listen up, understand,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
then get into the financial.
Yes. Yes.
And is that an accepted piece that we should do?
Oh
Kind
yes,
of.
oh yes. It's
Okay.
it's like in the case of a widowed person, you cannot immediately ask them to do something because they're grieving for the death of their spouse. So in this case, you obviously cannot jump into the thing and ask them to move on faster and faster, especially because such kind of cases, the trust. It's not like I said, it's not like she didn't trust me. She just needed to be saying that I am taking these decisions. I don't want to have consequences in later that I couldn't understand what I'm going in for.
All
So
right.
definitely a sounding board comes first, and then only it moves to the next.
So I think one big thing that is coming, this safety bit, which means that because there is a safety angle, you will take things slowly. It won't happen fast. It will take
Yes.
time. So I will now maybe open this up for everyone else to ask questions to you folks. I asked a bunch of my own questions. So I request folks, please raise your hand. I know you're typing in your questions. Please raise your hand so that I could just unmute you, let you ask your question, and we can move forward. Yeah. So the first question is from Deepak. Deepak, go ahead, ask your question.
Happy Women's Day to all the women panelists.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what my understanding is, earning women from a metro city like Bangalore, Mumbai, Delhi, Kolkata, how different is it from an earning woman from tier 2 cities? Because what I feel is, in tier 2 cities they are more conservative, and they're towards savings and investing for long term, and in metro cities they are spending more towards their lifestyle. And then how does it impact in the long term? Yeah.
Kiran is laughing. Kiran, I'll let you take this one. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think it is not that women in metro cities are, spending only on lifestyle. So that is the picture maybe the ad world is presenting to you, but it is unfortunately, it's not the case. So see, women all across, I think, focus properly on their life goals. I mean, though they might not be able to probably describe it in the same manner, or they might not, have the ideas about how to achieve those goals, but everybody wants their children to study well. Everybody wants to have a comfortable retirement. So those are the typical goals that any woman would have. The only difference which I feel, I have not dealt with many tier 2 women, so most of my clients are from metro cities. But what I presume is that there would be lesser exposure probably to money in smaller cities. Why I bring this up is because I had a very young couple who were from Coimbatore. And they said that when we shifted to Mumbai, we could feel that buzz of money talk in Mumbai. And that was very, very different from our hometown. So I'm just picking up from there. I'm thinking that probably that conversation about money does not happen so openly, or that is not the culture of tier 2 cities vis-a-vis in other cities, or say in Mumbai particularly. So I think goal-wise, there wouldn't be a difference. It is only that you need to explain to the women clients that, okay, this is how you can approach, and these are the ways which are available to you, which either, whether you are in tier 2 or in Mumbai, doesn't make a difference. These opportunities are available to you too.
Renu, I see that you wanted to say something. Go ahead.
Exactly. See, I have had experience on both the sides, tier 2 and metro and, US clients and, all three labels, what I would say. What I felt is women in metro are more independent, more free thinking as compared to tier 2, tier 3 cities. So they rely a lot more upon what the parents are saying, or uncles are saying, or aunties are saying. Got to be mindful of that. So if you want to acquire them as a client, expose them to equity, go in the direction that you would go, thinking that the whole family is pressurizing them to keep it in gold, FD, and land. Keep that, be mindful of that. Other than that, I think savings would be kind of similar depending upon what their requirements are. But influence wise and free thinking wise, I have seen a very clear difference.
Ratnashi, I see you're raising your hand. Please go ahead, ask your question.
Yeah, so from the women advisors here, quickly tell me, what do you think is the difference in the young women who are independent, and what is their thought process vis-a-vis a little bit of contrast, because I also see a lot of how homemakers also taking more interest. But what is your experience vis-a-vis homemakers whom you are trying to also help in terms of financial advice?
Dilshad, you want to take this?
Sure. So I think the young women are definitely much more informed, and they're very clear about their goals. They're very articulate. They know what they want. At the same time, they don't believe in very long-term goals, right? They want to, they believe more in experiential kind of goals, like a vacation or a travel or something that they'd like to experience. But they are very aware of what they want. And mind you, the younger ones, and here I'm not talking about women or men, before they approach us, they actually studied our background. They have looked at, the qualification, the certification, the experience, and they come and ask specific questions in that regard. So definitely the younger lot is much more informed.
Hey, Uday, if you allow, can I add?
Yes, please.
Yeah,
your panel.
No. Ratnashi, my experience had been, like you said, younger women are thinking very differently as compared to to older women. But at the same time, these younger women are also coming from family backgrounds. They're very secured, not just family background, and emotionally also they are very secured. And that helps them take higher risks because they're not insecure as the previous generation. So there's a marked difference in the way they're taking on money and life both. So we are able to very easily put their money into equity, let them have higher risk, risky assets. They're not lurking towards gold that much. Homemakers, in contrast to that, I have found are more conservative. They are mindful of the fact constantly that it's not their money. They are custodians of the money, and they are not willing to take higher risks.
I don't have a question right now, and maybe till the time being, if any, okay, Deepak has another question. I'll let him go ahead ask his question. Deepak, go ahead, ask your question.
Yeah, the another question is the woman perception towards. I have two parts. Woman perception towards gold, because whenever I say, when my wife says she wants to buy jewelry, I always suggest that you go for sovereign gold bond. There is no GST. You will save a lot of charges, and in fact you get 2.5% per annum as an interest as well. And she, hits back to me saying that, shall I wear sovereign gold bond and go?
Exactly. I was about to say the same thing, Deepak. You can't hang the bonds in your ears.
Yeah. So that is how. But again, I mean, buying more gold also hurts our economy as well, and bigger prospect. This is my first.
दीपक भाई पहले घर का सोचिए, इकोनॉमी का बाद में सोचिएगा. Buy her the gold she
I
wants.
was just going to say that. So just indulge her to the extent that she wants that one piece of jewelry, and then possibly it can be invested in a investment gold asset.
Yeah.
So you have to differentiate why you are buying gold. Are you buying it for investment, or are you buying it to, as a jewelry or a piece of something which you will cherish and give it away in inheritance to your daughter-in-law or daughter? So whether with your woman client or with your spouse, look at that angle. It's a delight to wear jewelry. So can't take away that joy from women.
Yeah, but I always say, suggest those who are, suppose a woman who is at the age of 18 and she is getting married in next 6 to 8 years. So I always suggest that, you put it in sovereign gold bonds. At the time of your marriage, you will get the entire matured amount. And, then definitely,
Yeah.
But she'll have to wait for 8 years.
That's a perfect approach.
He can't get married till the sovereign gold bond matures.
No.
Basically, next 8 years you'll not be married.
Yeah.
I will let Deepak settle this separately. I have another person asking a question. Namrata, go ahead, ask your question.
Yeah, hi, good evening, everyone, and a very happy Women's Day to all of you. So I have recently started my entrepreneurial journey. I have 13 years of experience behind me. I quit my banking job to do something on my own and probably add value because I was not being able to do that in my previous role. My question to all the panelists is, what are the suggestions that you have for somebody who's starting at this juncture?
Yeah. Shall I take it today if you are okay with it?
I want all of you to share one challenge and how you overcome those challenges. So all of you go one by one, please.
Okay.
And also maybe support, unexpected support that you got while you were on this path. That will be very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Namrata, I have to add this, and I'm gonna take, snatch away everyone's chance. First, I'm gonna say that one thing is, and I have said that always, this profession is just perfect for women. Okay, we make the best advisors in the world. So don't forget that part. We have the web thinking capacity, we have the empathy, we have knowledge. This is something which is meant for us. So, I'm glad that you have joined. Welcome to the, workforce, and it should be very, very successful. There are no challenges. Trust me, there are no challenges left in this field at all for women. Just go ahead. The challenge is only in your mind if there is any. There is no challenge. Once you get going with it, just make sure that your ecosystem is set. There is enough help for you, because I'm assuming you would have family and everyone. So make sure that you don't get bogged down by that. Otherwise, there are no challenges. Just go ahead and make the best of your life.
Kiran, Kavita,
Thanks.
I want you guys to add something.
I like to add something. Namrata, it always helps to have a mentor. I personally am of the opinion that a mentor will make your life, your goals, you'll achieve what you want much faster, more easily. If you can find a mentor who's going to guide you through. Personally, because when I started my career, I worked with someone who was amazing person. So from him, I got to learn so much. My journey as an independent financial advisor was very easy because of my experiences with him, because of what I learned from him. So I would suggest you catch hold of somebody in the industry who's willing to mentor you. And I'm sure it's such a huge, the opportunities are so many that you should easily find somebody who will guide you through this journey.
As they say, the entrepreneurial journey is quite a lonely one to begin with, at least.
Why you need a mentor, which is why.
And also,
Are you with Arya or not as yet, Namrata?
Sorry?
Have you joined Arya or not?
No, not at all. Not
Yes,
yet.
Join Arya.
Have you
Join
registered as an
Arya. It's
advisor?
not lonely then.
I've registered as a MFD, mutual fund distributor.
Okay.
So Namrata, one thing that I would like to add here is that, as you mentioned, that it's a very lonely journey. So build your networks, make friends, join study circles. When we started off, there wasn't this fraternity available to share knowledge. So it was a struggle for us at that point in time. But right now, all these ecosystems are in place. So just jump in and invest in yourself. I mean, invest in building these networks, the teams, and the knowledge base. So I mean, you'll get a lot to learn, and there are these facilities available.
So I continue to study, ma'am. So I completed my CFP somewhere around in 2016. I am taking my level 2 exam, CFA level 2 exams this June. So I think as advisors, that's a continuous process. If you have to add value to your clients, you have to add value to yourself. That's the basic. And I understand that completely, because
So I'd like to add as well, Namrata. So in addition to what Kavita said, I think also remember two more things. One is when you start out, you should be ready to do everything, right?
Yes.
You cannot have somebody doing the calls for you, somebody doing the sales for you, somebody doing the accounting, so you should be prepared to do everything. And that's what an entrepreneur journey starts with. And the second is try and find a co-founder. I think that's something that's important and something that I feel that I've lost out on. So whatever could be the arrangement, etc. But I think the earlier you start, if I were to give advice to my younger self, I think that would be in addition to mentoring, which is what Kavita said, that would help a lot.
Thanks.
Namrata,
Thanks so
here
much.
you have your answers, and wish you all the very best.
I'm extremely grateful to all of you. Thank you so
Wish you
much
all
for
the
your
best.
invaluable responses.
Namrata, I would suggest while you are doing, while you've done CFP, CFA and all, move towards RIA and a fee only advisory practice. That's the future, so move towards that, and that's how you make a wonderful career. You have got almost 20-25 years of life ahead of you.
Surely, ma'am. Thanks for the suggestion. I'll implement that too as well.
All right. So, do we have any other questions? We are 1 minute. Anyone else wants to ask your question? Please go ahead, raise your hand as such. Let me ask you folks something which is personal. So, when did you guys when did you cross that bridge, saying that, hey, yes, this is what I want to do? What happened? What was that incident? Very quickly, if you could share it, it would be fantastic.
Can I go first? Yeah, so see, for me, it was a very clear-cut point. There was this article in Outlook Money magazine. It used to be Intelligent Investor in those days, somewhere in 2003. And it described a CFP course. And I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. I mean, it was just a perfect hit at that time. I know this is what I'm going to do. It took me around 1.5 years to actually quit my job, 6 months of study to get my CFP designation, and then I was on. So it was a very clear thing for me getting into this profession by choice.
Very nice.
My case, it was I passed out of my MBA in 2001, bang in the middle of the recession. At that point, IDBI Bank was looking for people in their investment advisory team, and I applied. So, jo naukri mila le liya. That was how it was. There was no grand plan. It was never planned. But I was very lucky that that journey that started from there, I figured that this is exactly what I want to do. I did my CFA and then my CFP much later. But I was very lucky to find this career. It was just
Good.
luck.
Dilshad, Renu, quickly,
Yeah.
5 seconds, please.
For me, it was 2008 CFP was a turning point. Until then, I was a agent as such. After completing the CFP, I decided that it's important. I mean, the realization dawned that I'm actually solving problems for people. And subsequently in 2009, when the entry load was abolished as well. So that was another reason which, all the more, I would say, enhanced the career in this direction.
Okay, Renu, for you.
I have never been on the sell side. I was always on the buy side as an investor and earlier in corporate finance career. It's 2011 and 12 when SEBI started talking about regulatory changes. That's when I decided to found FinScholars, and right from day one, it's fee only buy side practice. So it was a regulator which helped me take the decision.
Awesome. So fantastic. Thank you so much. We have, I think Sarika wants to ask a question. Sarika, go ahead. Unmute yourself and ask the question.
Yeah, good evening, everyone, and happy Women's Day to all the ladies out there. My question to each one of you would be quickly, if you can tell me what was the biggest challenge for you as a woman advisor, me being from the same field and in the same fraternity.
Okay, who wants to take it up? I thought the challenge was because I was doing fee only practice. So convincing people and having the energy to be able to, continue with it, of explaining the same thing over and over again to 10 people, that was the major challenge. Other than that, I really can't think of a challenge.
Sarika, I want to interrupt and ask. So, hum log, when we were preparing for this panel discussion, right? So
Yes.
I very smartly asked this question, and all these ladies told me कि बस कोई challenge नहीं है, तुम ये सब बारे में बात छोड़ो. You celebrate our success, you celebrate our growth. There are no challenges out there, right? So I
Trust me, when people ask me this is the only answer that I have, that women never have challenges. They overcome everything and they are the best money managers. So they cannot have challenges.
Exactly.
Cool. So you have your answer. I think Renu, Dilshad, Kavita, Kiran, this was a fantastic panel. I absolutely enjoyed myself. It was a great experience to hear you all. So thank you to IFAST, thank you to Arya, thank you to everyone who logged in. I think this was my pleasure.
Thank you,
absolutely.
Thank you so much for having us here.
Yeah, it was an absolute pleasure and a lot of effort you've put into this. And thanks to Arya and IFAST as well, and to the wonderful audience for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you, folks.
Thank you very much, Uday, for putting the whole thing together. I think you have worked the hardest amongst the whole team.
My pleasure. Like I said, I had the best amount of learning talking to all of you. Thank you so much.
And I would like to mention that, thanks to IFAST and especially Eric, who initiated that idea 10 days back. He says, okay, let's have something for Women's Day. And quickly, we all just came together and did it. Glad talking to all of you. Very, very
I'd like to say one last thing. Sorry, if I may, just for a minute. There is this Goldman Sachs and IMB program that I'm attending, which is mainly for women entrepreneurs. And I would really be happy if I can share this. I'll probably share it with the Arya group or something. If you would like to sign up for that, it's a big learning and it's a course. I mean, I would say just a 3-month course, but it really brings a lot of perspective if you would like to understand the growth of your business and the next steps for it. Be happy to share that. I'm just saying I have nothing to do with them. I'm just telling you all for your interest.
Thanks.
That'll be
Thank
great.
you.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you.
Please go ahead and share, all of us who will be interested, I'm sure,
Sure.
and
Sure.
everyone will get benefited.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone. Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you.
Thank you
so
very much. Thank you,
Have a
everyone.
nice evening. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.